We get a first look at this Penn State Wrestling lineup in the Bryce Jordan Center, and Oklahoma is going to be a solid test for them.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State Wrestling, and as always, thank you so much for checking out another edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State Wrestling. And a quick turnaround, help me welcome back the voice of Penn State Wrestling, Jeff Byers, as we are going to predict this Penn State-Oklahoma dual meet, which goes down this Friday in the Bryce Jordan Center. So we'll make predictions for key matchups. We're going to talk about the best matchups because PJ Duke is going to be tested. Connor Mirasola filling in for Josh Barr certainly has a tough test. So it's more about the individual matchups. Yes, Penn State will win the dual meet, but very good individual matchups that you want to watch for and what to expect from an Oklahoma team that is built comprehensively through the transfer portal. A lot of new names, a lot of new faces, guys that could make some noise at the NCAA tournament. But we focus on Penn State because now, okay, all the hypotheticals or all the analysis, all the discussions, finally we get some answers as far as, what's Penn State going to do at heavyweight? Aaron Nagao at 141. How's he going to look? Marcus Blaze is a true freshman. PJ Duke as true freshman stepping into the lineup immediately. Connor Mirasola filling in for Josh Barr. I think there's so many places we can, Rocco Welsh transferring in and settling in at 184. So, Jeff, when you look at this Penn State lineup, what's kind of the first thing that jumps out to you, what you want to see from them right out of the gate?
Well, I think for me that the biggest anticipation is certainly seeing the two freshmen in a Penn State singlet for the first time and seeing them go through the collegiate experience for the first time with all the credentials they bring in. And then the other one that probably has me the most excited is Aaron Nagao and just his opportunity to get back out there and kind of show his wear. It feels like maybe some folks have forgotten just kind of how special he is and what he can do. Now he's going to be in a very tough weight class, obviously, starting with Jesse Mendez. But I think it'll be exciting to have him back in the lineup here and to just kind of see where he can go and how his season progresses.
And it was great to hear from Nagao to get some perspective because, I asked him, I said, hey, there's the allure of the transfer portal. Nothing's guaranteed here at Penn State. You could have more of an immediate result, so to speak. If you transfer out, you go somewhere else, you're immediately the starter, you get some more guarantees. And Nagao, despite all the adversity, has stuck through it and is now reaping the benefits of it, so to speak, by pushing through all the adversity. A lot of it's bad luck, it's injuries. It's not like he lost a starting battle or anything like that. No, he's won a starting battle despite all of that injury, all of the injuries, some illnesses that he dealt with. So I'm really eager to see how Nagao does, coming back and taking that time to rest, recover, because when he was peaking at Minnesota, he was a top 5 wrestler. So I do think you make a great point, Jeff, to say that some people kind of forget the potential that Nagao has because it's just been so quiet.
Yeah, and I think he's just, he's a special kid. I think that I think we might have talked about this last time I was on, but I think when you look at this roster now, when you have just the 30 spots and the financial commitment involved now, you need to have all 30 kids be kids that want to be here and that you're comfortable with. And that's not to say that either end of that relationship couldn't change over time, but I think they feel, the coaches, feel really good about all 30 kids they have, what they bring to the table. And, my read at least is that all 30 kids feel like they are here for the right reason, that they are where they belong and that they are appreciative of the opportunity they have to compete for this program. And, we've talked about this before, but we've just never seen anything like what Penn State has going in collegiate athletics. We've seen great dynasties in wrestling in particular with Oklahoma State in a few different runs, Iowa in a run. I mean, we've seen some great teams and fantastic dynasties that have gone a couple of decades. We've not seen the consistency at the top end, meaning with the individual titles that Penn State had in this last decade. And certainly when you just look at the last 2 years and now the potential, at least, for what this season could bring, it's just unprecedented heights in terms of the excellence that this program is achieving right now.
And then there's those two freshmen that are going to be in the lineup, and you can't go wrong. I mean, here's what I, again, want to point out about this Penn State team is the depth, okay? The fact that Penn State has the luxury to redshirt again, it's at least right now, things can change. A lot of it is still always to be determined, but at least right now, the answer is Marcus Blaze at 133 with Masanosuke Ono redshirting. But you have depth there at 133, at 157. Gosh, I already made the argument right out of the gate, and Jeff, you would agree that Penn State has both of the best 157-pounders in the country. They're both in State College, but you can only start one. And they're going to go with PJ Duke because logistically, it makes sense, okay? To get him at 157, to maximize a weight class that, he's not going to be able to maintain long-term. And then you still have, strategically, you had Tyler Kasak's redshirt, a little bit of somewhat kind of timing, a little bit of luck in there, right? Because they were going to originally redshirt him. But things changed with Shane Van Ness's injury, and you come full circle with it. That's why Kel Sanderson understands how important depth is. Josh Barr needs to rest, needs to recover. Oh, look at that. You have another national title contender, caliber wrestler, and Connor Mirasola ready to go, ready to start. But those two freshmen, PJ Duke and Marcus Blaze in particular, true freshmen right out of the gate, they can contend for national titles in this first year for them.
Yeah, they're both elite wrestlers, but I think more than that, it's kind of the maturity and the wisdom they have at such a young age that they bring that I think has the coaches very comfortable starting them and knowing what they can achieve. And that, regardless of how the season works out for them, and certainly the expectation is it'll work out very well for both, but I think they're both well equipped to handle when or if some things don't go the way they're hoping for this season. They both kind of have the big picture stuff in mind. But again, they both immediately are among the contenders at their respective weight classes. They just come in very much college ready.
133, that's just a deep class. 157, you could make the argument that I know Antrell Taylor's defending, but okay, if you're going to say, hey, Taylor's number one, it is safe to say that PJ Duke will be number two early in the season here. And again, very well may overtake him at some point in time throughout the season. So as we continue, this Oklahoma lineup, it's a makeshift team that went in and played wrestling free agency. They made tons of adjustments through the portal that brought in some really talented wrestlers that individually can make some noise when they are peaking. And I'm talking about in the postseason. So it's going to create some interesting matchups against this Penn State team. What you need to know about the Oklahoma Sooners, that is coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And lines are available for Penn State football, and you can use bonus bets on anything, NFL, NBA, college football. So Penn State, 7.5-point favorite against Michigan State, minus 285 on the money line, plus 230 if you're thinking Sparty for the upset. The total is set at 49.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. And remember, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Don't discount this Oklahoma lineup. Okay, yes, Penn State's going to win the dual meet. There's always, just because everybody's near the top 5, or, as we'll see this lineup progress and the rankings adjust, I mean, we might be in a situation, Jeff, again, where this Penn State lineup, everybody's top 10, maybe even everybody pushing top 5. Heavyweight, again, to be determined and everything with Lucas Cochran and Cole Mirasola as that battle unfolds, again, which we can talk about here because they're going to be tested as well, whichever wrestler they decide to roll out. But as we start to the conversation about this Oklahoma team, built through the transfer portal, some select spots where in the postseason they can be a lot more dangerous. I don't know about as a dual meet team, but in the tournament, definitely. Wrestlers like Jack Gioffre, Rafael Hippolito was one of the initial, not a favorite per se, but a strong contender last season when he was at Virginia Tech. Yeah, these are some talented wrestlers that have now all grouped together at Oklahoma. Brian Saldano at Virginia, DJ Parker, who was originally at North Dakota State, but has now settled into Oklahoma at year 2. I mean, this is a pretty, for more than half of the lineup, the Sooners have some solid wrestlers at a good amount of weight classes here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think they have a very balanced team, and I think they're very good. I think they may be a little better dual meet team in my mind than they will be a tournament team. I don't know that they have kind of the top end firepower, the guys that you would say are surefire All-Americans. That they have several guys that I think are going to contend, and I'm sure they'll have several that will end up on the podium in Cleveland. But there's not none of their guys are like, when you look at a Levi Haines or a Mitchell Messenbrink, you feel like their odds of at least getting to the finals are really, really strong if they're healthy. I think Oklahoma, that lineup is more a lot of guys that are going to be round of 12 contenders, are going to be NCAA qualifiers and very good. The question is, can they develop into more of the surefire All-Americans as the season progresses? And I think that'll be the challenge for their coaching staff. But it's a really solid team top to bottom coming in.
And that's it. When you have the transfer portal, you don't have to rely on a 4 or 5 year plan. If you need to flip the roster over and rebuild and start from scratch, you could have a really solid lineup in, a season, an off season, but sometimes, it does take 2, right? DJ Parker, year 2 in Oklahoma, but then again, you go and get complimentary wrestlers to fill out the lineup in a Saldano, a Hippolito, a Keller. Jeff, who do you think's their best addition to this point in time? I mean, Parker, you would say, is the obvious choice for 2 years now because he's going to be the highest rated wrestler. But I think to go and get somebody like Rafael Hippolito, who I do think is somewhat underrated going into this season because, again, expectations, at least in the postseason, he was ranked fairly high going into last year's NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think he was probably the biggest acquisition. Again, I think they upgraded kind of across the board, I think, with the transfer portal guys that they got, and they made the decision that that's the route they wanted to go to try to upgrade, and I think they did that. I had somebody say to me the other day they don't think Oklahoma really matches up especially well with Penn State, and I said, well, I think that's probably true. I'm also wondering what team it is exactly that you think does match up well with Penn State.
Does anybody? Yeah.
You're talking about a Penn State team here that I would argue going into the season has 7 clear national title contenders. I would argue they probably have 8 national title contenders, and I think the other 2 are high All-American possibilities, and I don't rule out the possibility that they could be right there in the mix for national titles at the end. Well, that's a pretty tough lineup for anybody to match up with. So again, I think Oklahoma has done a really good job improving the roster and going out and getting guys that they think can help them and will help them. But again, you're matching up against this Penn State team. I think has a very good chance to, for a third straight season, set a new scoring mark at the NCAA tournament.
Well, and remember what is also on the line in the regular season is that dual meet streak. This is the beginning of the continuation of the dual meet streak that they're carrying over from last season. The record is 77, which if everything goes well, they will set that in Nashville. It kind of stinks that it's on the road. It's away from Rec Hall and the Bryce Jordan Center. You'd like to see them do that, but it's going to be against Stanford if everything goes well, which, as it should, because again, Penn State has the depth, but it starts here in the Bryce Jordan Center against Oklahoma, where, again, Penn State should win comfortably, and it is always on the table because of how highly ranked these wrestlers are, that Penn State could shut out the Sooners. It's crazy to think. I mean, this is a Big 12 team. This is a respectable team. Again, guys that, more than half of the lineup, hey, these are all American caliber wrestlers, and Penn State might shut them out.
Yeah, and again, it just goes back to the matchups. I think when you look at it, you have, 4 guys that start the season ranked number 1, and I think you have at least, again, 3 other guys that are certainly in the mix to make a run at a national title individually this season. And that's just, again, that is a really difficult team to try to match up with. The other thing is Penn State just, I do think there is something to the reputation they have now, and they come in with a ton of confidence. And I do think one of the difficulties for other programs now is getting over the mystique now that does surround Penn State wrestling. Can you just go out there and focus on what you can do in your wrestling and not get caught up in, hey, we're taking on this dynastic power, or individually I'm taking on this guy that has all of these credentials. I do think there is, and I don't know that this will play out Friday night, but I do think there is, if you want to call it an intimidation factor or just an off factor with what Penn State has going right now that is, I think for a lot of teams, I think it is a real thing in terms of making it difficult for them to really go out and wrestle at their best level.
There is that, I forget who said it, but that you're already trailing by 1 to 2 sets when you're facing Roger Federer because of what you think of the tennis great, because of what you think of Roger Federer. So you're already mentally down 2 sets. It's kind of the same thing with Penn State wrestling. You're already mentally down by how many individual losses to that point that you feel like you already have to come back. So couldn't agree more. Now let's actually talk about some of these matchups. We're going to highlight the best ones, give a little more in-depth analysis there, but go by match who we are expecting for both lineups as far as Oklahoma and Penn State, who to trot out there on Friday night in the Bryce Jordan Center. That is coming up next on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Do you need parts fast for a project? Well, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. And their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. Over at supplyhouse.com, real people, real service. As we're in the home stretch of this podcast, we're going to go through the lineups, who each team is going to trot out for the head-to-head matchups. But again, focus on the ones who, right, okay, at 125, Luke Lodahl has a favorable matchup against Barrick Jordan. Marcus Blaze should have a favorable matchup against Tyson Sharmely. Aaron Nagao, a favorable matchup against Alex Braun at 141. Okay, so as we go through, that's, potentially a tech fall for Lodahl. Hey, maybe a first tech fall or a pin right out of the gate for Blaze. So I'm anticipating bonus points in these first three matchups here. Jeff, I imagine that you would agree as we go to 149, where we do have, potentially an NCAA tournament caliber matchup here with Shane Van Ness, who now emerges as the true clear favorite at 149, going into the entirety of the season against Jack Gioffre. And these two have tons of common opponents, but Van Ness is going to be favored in this one for obvious reasons. But how can Gioffre challenge Van Ness in this opening season matchup?
Yeah, it's one of those things that's a lot easier said than done, but I think trying to use his length to try to keep Van Ness at bay. But I mean, Van Ness has been doing that for his whole career. He's almost always the shorter guy and has to work in under longer arms, longer legs, and he just has it down. And he's just so tenacious with the way he wrestles, Van Ness. To be honest with you, I don't know. I think probably if Gioffre can catch him in something, maybe take advantage of Van Ness being over aggressive. But again, I think Shane has just settled in. He's while he is certainly very aggressive, I don't think he's careless with it, and I just think he's going to be a tough out for anybody. I think it's going to be hard for anybody to even keep it close with Van Ness this year because of just how good he is and how relentless he is with his offensive pursuit.
And last season, again, just kind of as a reminder, Shane Van Ness, that was, even though he did shake off the rust fairly early, fairly quickly, you kind of need that full season to really reestablish everything when you're going through a long-term injury. I also do want to make some corrections. Carter Schmidt should be the anticipated starter at 133, and Tyler Welsh should be the anticipated starter at 141. Again, favorable matchups nonetheless for a Marcus Blaze and an Aaron Nagao. But Gioffre and Shane Van Ness, that's one of the highlighted matchups. And then 157, PJ Duke right out of the gate against a defending ACC champion. Number 7, he's a top 10 wrestler. So this is your prove it moment for PJ Duke. Are you as advertised against Rafael Hippolito?
Yeah, and again, a little more collegiate experience there for Hippolito, obviously, than what Duke has going into his first match. PJ obviously comes in with a lot of credentials. I will say, Zach, and I think PJ will be fine, but it's different. I mean, college wrestling is just a different scene. The energy level, the Jordan Center crowd, all of that. So it is going to be, even though PJ has been in all kinds of big spots and certainly bigger spots in the overall scheme of things than a early season dual meet at the Bryce Jordan Center, I do think it's just different. That environment's a little different. Even just the wrestling, college wrestling is just a little different than anything else you do out there. So certainly high hopes for PJ Duke. I will say, if something does go wrong and PJ Duke loses Friday night, Penn State fans can take heart in that a lot of all-time greats at Penn State came out of the gate and did not look great in their first match. Again, I think Duke will be fine. I'm not predicting anything like this, but it's not a huge deal if any of these guys suffer an early season defeat. Again, it's part of the learning experience here at the collegiate level.
And I mean, and again, for what it's worth, I'm not encouraging a loss. I'm not encouraging a defeat, but sometimes it's better to rip that Band-Aid off early, get that loss right out of the gate so you can address any problems, any issues, and have that as a learning tool throughout the entirety of the season. I think some of Luke Lilladall's losses in the regular season were really valuable because you saw him turn it up a notch in the postseason. So I think PJ Duke is, is that good where, hey, he could be undefeated by the end of the regular season, but again, to be determined, but it's still a great matchup for him with someone who has that pedigree coming in at 165. Peyton Keller, again, this is health dependent because he was dealing with an injury for most of last season. Owen Eck, who's a redshirt freshman, he actually wrestled recently at a Missouri invite and finished 4th. So he could be the starter. Mitchell Messenbrink will either have a major decision, tech fall. Again, bonus points expected for Messenbrink there. At 174, Levi Haines against a Carter Schubert, who've actually finished 2nd at that Missouri invite. So again, that's a challenge from a really an underknown wrestler. And then at 184, okay, Rocco Welsh. This is where we'll settle down, Jeff. Rocco Welsh against Brian Saldano, who was also a runner-up at that Missouri invite, and again is a wrestler that has wrestled a ton of matches, transfers over from Virginia, so he is also somebody that can score a lot of points as well. So Welsh has to be pretty stout with his defense on Friday.
Yeah, and Saldano's obviously familiar with the Big Ten and with Penn State, and so I think this is a matchup that I'm sure Saldano is looking forward to. I know Rocco Welsh is looking forward to getting his opportunity here in a Penn State singlet as well. So I think, part of that will be just kind of who manages the nerves better, at least early on. And then, again, I think Rocco is a very special wrestler. I think, in my mind, there's just four guys that I'm expecting will separate from the field here as the season unfolds, and I think he's one of them. And I think you can take those 4, at least in my mind, and shake those names up in a hat and pick them out one at a time. And I think the order, maybe we'll get a clearer idea of that as the season unfolds, but I think any of those top 4. I think Saldano will be a really good test here out of the gate for Rocco Welsh. I think he is really ready and raring to go here for the upcoming season.
Connor Mirasola filling in for Josh Barr. And again, Barr has the luxury of being able to rest and recover with as much time as he needs because Connor Mirasola himself could anchor 197 if there, wasn't a national title favorite at his weight class in the same mat room. But DJ Parker is, again, I think this is kind of the closest matchup. This is the one that I circle that say, okay, this is the headliner, so to speak, because Connor Mirasola, kind of like PJ Duke, this is essentially, I know that he wrestled at some opens. I know that he wrestled in different tournaments where he was winning, and I'm not talking about freestyle. I'm talking about for the folk style Penn State season this last year. So, but Mirasola kind of has that anticipation that if he wasn't blocked by Josh Barr, this is another young and up and coming wrestler that could contend for titles if he just had the opportunity. So DJ Parker, someone who's kind of a fringe title contender, so to speak, is that perfect test to know, okay, just how good is Connor Mirasola right this moment in mid-November?
Yeah, Parker is very good. I do think Mirasola, it reminds me a little bit of, you go back to the Ed Ruth, Matt Brown days, but he is right there in terms of top end wrestlers at 197. And Josh Barr will be the first to tell you that. He and Lucas Cochran were right on his heels all season last year. And, I think Connor's gotten a lot better even from where he was a year ago. I know he's excited about the opportunity to get out there and compete in a Penn State singlet and in that atmosphere at the Bryce Jordan Center. And, I think Connor will go out and put on a show here. It should be a really fun match to watch.
And then we get to heavyweight, just one more. This because, again, it's the what if of, is it going to be the twin brother, Cole Mirasola, finalizing, being the closer in the lineup? Or is it going to be Lucas Cochran, who has, a lot of unknown here, but just with what you and I have discussed, this is a toss-up that this is really it's going to take some time to figure this out. And there really isn't necessarily, a factor of the red shirt that you get so many matches. Cole Mirasola and Lucas Cochran are going to go back and forth until Penn State knows for sure, okay, hey, this is going to be our starter. But Juan Mora is actually is coming on early in the season here as that heavyweight for Oklahoma. I guess he's the breakout star, so to speak, because he goes and he wins at that Missouri Invitational, wins the title at his weight class. So this isn't somebody, he's lowly ranked or he's unranked, so this should be an easy one for Mirasola and or Cochran. I can't say that that's the case against Mora.
No, this will be a really good test for Cole. I think, it's an adjustment anytime you're going up a weight class. And I think Cole has been really smart in the way he has gone about his approach at heavyweight, both from the gaining weight perspective, but also there's just some different techniques. It's just a different style, different feel at the heavyweight division than it is at 197 or any other weight class. And so, I do think there's an adjustment period there, and I think that's why Cole has a bit of the upper hand over Lucas Cochran, at least at the start of the season here, because of the experience he had last year. And I do think he's gotten a lot more comfortable with kind of how to wrestle at heavyweight. And I think, again, this will be a really good test. I think both of these guys have a chance to be on the podium in Cleveland here at the end of the season. So I think this will be a welcomed challenge for Cole Mirasola and for the coaches to get a little bit of a measuring stick match here right out of the gate. And then, again, win, lose, draw, you get some important information to go back and work on in terms of areas you need to improve in and areas that you feel good about where you're at right now. Again, you'll keep working on everything, obviously, but I think these are the types of matches that are really beneficial for a guy like Cole Mirasola to get early in the season.
The first step of the season, the 2025-26 campaign, is finally here for this Penn State wrestling team. And thank you so much for joining us on this Penn State Oklahoma preview. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. My name is Zach Seyko, your host as always. He is the voice of Penn State wrestling. You will be able to listen to that broadcast from the Bryce Jordan Center. Jeff will take you through the pre-match all the way through the dual meet and then recap it all Friday night live on air. So be sure to listen to it and follow Jeff outside of wrestling. Links to his work will be down in the description. Jeff, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate the perspective and the analysis as always.
Thanks, Zach.